Our water supply is in crisis as our world's population increases. Only 2.5% of water is not salty.
And most of that is locked away in ice caps and glaciers. Can you imagine that only 0.8 of 1% of the total water of the planet is available for use? That is like a drop in a bucket. And the major part of that drop is used for growing food, and then, of course, it has to be shared between household, industries, and other uses. You see, it is a very precious resource whose crisis should not be underestimated. 1/5 of the world's population is without access to safe drinking water, and half of that population is without access to adequate sanitation. Since less than 1% of the total water on the planet is available for use, every effort must be made to curb activities such as illegal logging, quarrying, construction, denuding the land, slash and burn agriculture, planned housing and unplanned housing, industrial waste, domestic waste.
Over the next 25 years, food will be required for another 2 to 3 billion people.
The allocation of water resources is just as important to food production as is the problem of land scarcity. Reuse of non-potable wastewater in agriculture can help communities meet water demands and supply challenges without any known significant health risks. Global warming poses another significant threat to water sources, particularly in small island states, since the projected rise of sea levels may cause saltwater intrusion into groundwater aquifers and further restricting access to potable water. The greatest danger to global food security comes from aquifer depletion. Aquifers are an essential source of water for food production. An aquifer works much like a huge sponge that stores water under the ground. It is porous rock that is below the Earth's surface, and when rain falls, it goes through the grass, then through the ground, and is stored in this porous rock. The stored water is then pumped out through water wells, treated for drinking, and distributed through our pipeline system. The Queen's Park Savannah in North Trinidad is an aquifer that supplies water to the city of Port of Spain. In recent years, scientists have become aware of the problems involved with the contamination of groundwater, and once they are polluted, it takes decades or centuries for them to cleanse themselves, so we have to protect our aquifers. The integrated water resource management approach is rooted in 4 principles known as the Dublin Principles, named after the UN Conference on Water Development held in Dublin, Ireland in 1992. There is a fixed amount of water on Earth to meet the needs of life, development, and the environment. Since water sustains life, effective management of water resources demands a holistic approach, linking social and economic development with protection of natural ecosystems. Effective management links land and water uses across the whole of a catchment area or groundwater aquifer.
The importance of protecting vital ecosystems, particularly in the context of integrated water resources management. Islands like Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago, these islands are small island developing states, and therefore we have to look at the whole management of the watersheds and the coastal zone. So when we're looking at managing the island with respect to water, we manage from, as the saying says, from ridge to reef, because everything that happens inside impacts on the coast, and everything that happens on the coast impacts internally. Now, part of the whole thing that governs the watershed management really is linked to the hydrological cycle. And the hydrological cycle has, of course, the whole ecosystem included, because water is part of the environment. And how the water is impacted affects the ecosystem. And we have important parts of this hydrological cycle, like the mangroves, the swamps, which are critical areas to water management because they play roles with respect to the cleansing of your fresh water.
Watersheds, or some people call them catchment areas. And if you were to look at them individually, you would notice that in Trinidad and Tobago, a number of these watersheds have mixed activities in them. The upper reaches would be forested, especially in northern parts of Trinidad and also in Tobago. And as you get into the middle and lower reaches of these catchment areas of watershed, then you start to have human activity, development. Because of those human development, in terms of agriculture practices and even built development, then you start to get see the effects in the particular watersheds. If you're reliant on aquifers or groundwater sources and you're having a shortfall in rainfall, or the rain is not falling in the areas where it recharges the aquifers, then certainly over time you can see a diminishing of your groundwater sources because it's not being recharged because the climate change is impacting on where the rain is falling. So it has to be determined where the rain is falling, if it's recharging the aquifers, or if you are building or doing any sort of development that would prevent the recharging of those important aquifers.
Managing our water resources requires the cooperation of many people, from policymakers in government to communities and individuals in their everyday lives.
In moving forward as a developing country, moving towards development status, there needs to be a balance between economic development and environmental preservation and conservation. We need to ensure that the catchment areas, the watersheds that are demarcated in any island developing states is properly managed. You must strike the balance between how much development you're going to allow in a particular watershed. It cannot be, you cannot allow large percentages of the catchment area to be under built development, because that will have an impact on your recharging of your aquifers and of course the amount of runoff you have to deal with when there's rainfall. So it's all about striking the balance between ensuring that you have a lot of green spaces, that development is well managed and zoned so that you have areas that are for agriculture, areas that are for industrial areas, areas that are for housing developments, and importantly areas that remain under green, under forests, for years to come, so that you would ensure the safeguard the present and future generations.
The basic IWRM concept has been extended to incorporate affected groups in decision-making, from farmers, environmentalists, women, and communities who can all influence and recommend strategies for water resource development and management. We are all stakeholders in this, and so managing water development effectively will ensure long-term sustainable use for future generations.
Right here in our households, we are guilty of putting undue stress on our water supplies. From the chemicals we use in our homes, to leaving the water running before taking a shower, or while brushing our teeth.